And hello, zoning board. We are recording. We are live. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to the work session of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals for January 14th, 2025. And we have a little bit of an announcement, a new twist to the zoning board this time, and the town board has made a proclamation that there would be an alternate member, and we're excited to have that alternate member join us this evening. His name is John Thorson. He's a member of our community, a good standing member. We're happy to have him on board. He's sitting over there with Tyler. And thank you, John, for considering the position.
Thank you very much, Roy. Look forward to working with you all.
So with that, we'll go into our work session. We have some decisions this evening, and I'll read the first one into the record. The applicant is Stuart Adelsberg and Deborah Cole Adelsberg at 502 Holes of Water Road, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-157-1-7.1. The size and location is 29,741 square feet at 502 Holes of Water Road, Montauk Heights, Section 4, map number 334 in East Hampton. The description is to allow an existing approximately 300 square foot deck to remain within minimum rear yard lot line setbacks and generator to remain within minimum scenic easement setbacks. Relief sought is 2 variances are required for this application. 1 variance of 4.4 feet from 255-1110 of the town code is required to allow the existing decking to remain 10.6 feet from the rear yard lot line where a 15-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 1.2 feet from 255-1174 of the town code is required to allow the existing generator to remain 8.8 feet from the scenic easement where 10-foot setback is required, and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is A3, residence, Zone X, flood zone, and the secret class type 2. This is in my purview, so I will begin. Give me a second. So the property is located at 52 Holes of Water Road. And the applicant, as we read into the record, is Stuart Adelsberg and Deborah Cole Adelsberg. The hearing was on December 10th, 2024, and represented by Rick Whalen of Whalen Filer PLLC. The lot that we have before us is probably one of the most unique properties I've seen in this town. It is a triangle-shaped property that is contiguous to 2 Holes of Water Road. It was part of an urban renewal map, and part of that urban renewal was to create a 50-foot wide scenic easement along the property line. This scenic easement restricts this piece of property pretty severely. So the applicant before us, there was the original C of O, there was a zoning board decision that denied a pool in the rear of the property, and I think that was in 1988. And the most recent C of O is 2021, where they did a interior renovation and window replacement. Sometime after the owner bought the property, they redid the deck. The deck is now a wood deck. I think it was over a masonry deck. They slightly enlarged it, and as a result, the deck became 0.2 feet closer to the property line. And then there was a generator that was also installed, and that generator is within the 10-foot setback of the scenic easement. I find I'll go through the standards quick, but I find that the variances requests are minimal. The C of O on the deck, oddly enough, there was a C of O being 0.2 feet closer is a minimal de minimis enlargement to that deck as to the property line. And same thing with the generator. The scenic easement, in this situation and the size of the lot is so constrictive that the generator, and again, I think it's a de minimis, and I'll be approving this. So I just want to go through the standards on this so that we can just go through it. And the uniqueness of this property just warrants approval. Does the benefit of the applicant from a grant of the area variance outweigh any detriment which a grant of variance will cause the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the town as a whole? And yes, it does, as noted with the size of the property and the shape of the property. Is the area variance to be granted minimum variance necessary and adequate to alleviate the difficulty causing the applicant to request the area variance? And in this case, I do think it's a de minimis request, and I do think it is the minimum variance necessary. Has the applicant shown that the benefit accruing to him from the grant of the requested variance outweighs any harm that will be caused by the neighborhood of the town? Yes. The 50-foot wide scenic easement is contiguous to 2 holes of water road, and it will not affect any the character of the neighborhood. The next standard has to do with the character of the neighborhood, and this was with the deck. There's a property to the south of that is vacant, and the deck was C of O'd already, and being 2.2 feet closer to the property line will not affect the character of the neighborhood in this case. Is a requested area variance substantial? I say no. And will it have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood? No, there's no real environmental conditions to be concerned about here. And is it self-created? Yes, it is self-created. The owner did increase these and created the situation, but still does not impact my decision. So with that, I'm approving the application. What's going next? Denise, you want to go?
Sure. I agree with Chairman Levine. A 2020 CO indicates a slightly smaller stone patio at 10.8 feet from the rear yard lot line, which was replaced by the existing 300 square foot deck, which is 0.2 feet closer to the southern property line. The generator does not appear to be a threat to the character of the scenic easement. As indicated in the TAM, there does not appear to be any significant clearing around the generator or threat of clearing into the easement if the generator were to remain. But I do think one of our conditions of approval would be to strongly stipulate that that condition not change. If granted, this will not change the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties. The variances are not substantial. The photos indicate the existing deck is wide enough simply to provide room for a barbecue grill and tables with chairs. The approval will not adversely affect environmental features. The deck and generator are situated in actually very heavily vegetated areas, and the property to the southeast is vacant, and the area around the deck and property line is wooded. I do feel, and I'm in agreement with Chairman Deline, that this application does qualify for grant of the requested variances and is in compliance with section 255-1110 and 255-1174 of the town code.
Thank you. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm going to agree with my fellow board members. I think the key word here is uniqueness. It was brought up already by the chair. There's 2 ways in which I think this is particularly unique. It's unique for one in that more square footage of this lot is the scenic easement is an area that you can build on. The shape is obviously odd, and we talked about the terrible constrictions there are on a lot this size. And the other uniqueness I think that comes to play here is that the deck would be something we'd have a greater discussion about if there hadn't been a previous C of O that approved almost the same size area. So that 0.2 feet is, again, as was brought up, is de minimis. I think that the standards have been read in, and I agree with their interpretation. I think this is a lot that, as was brought up immediately by the chair, we probably haven't seen anything quite like this. It is quite unique in the size and the constrictions, and so I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
Thank you. Terry?
I also agree with all my fellow board members. The uniqueness is obvious by looking at the shape, and I thought the history on it was kind of interesting. The 50-foot wide scenic easement is something that was, when the subdivisions happened, was on the other side of Two Holes of Water Road. However, this property, and I think it was 4 others that Rick mentioned, somehow fell into this, and they got this scenic easement, leaving these incredibly constrained properties. I agree that the variances are de minimis, both of them, the generator and the deck. The neighbor on the deck side has a large property, and the house is situated there's a lot of vegetation between this deck and the neighbor's home. So I too think it meets all the standards of 255-1110, and I'm going to approve this application.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you. And two, I'm going to approve the application for both the variances, for the generator and for the deck, in addition to taking in the physical limitations of the triangular geometry and the substantial scenic easement, both of which kind of constrain significantly the usable area of the parcel. I do believe both variance requests meet the standards. I'm not going to go through all the numbers again because my fellow board members did. They are in, as I apply the code, not substantial. They won't have an impact on surroundings or neighborhood. And the benefit of having a deck that is 9 or 10 feet deep versus 6 feet, I actually think is a substantial benefit to the homeowner. And I guess the benefit that was described for leaving the generator where it is that it would be an unusually large cost. We don't know what it was to just move it for only 1.6 feet. I also don't think, and it will impact neighbors, neighborhood, or the scenic easement. And I also note that I believe that the scenic easement is and remains in good condition. I would agree with the vice chair, perhaps to put, something making clear that we want to make sure that is maintained. So all in, I'm approving the application.
Okay, thank you. Council, we good? Yeah. Thank you. Our next decision this evening is Shagian personal residence. Oh, you're recused.
From this one, yes.
Thank you. This is where in the future our alternate would step in.
No jumping in yet.
Not
You
yet,
want to
but
step in, John?
no. Say no.
Make a decision tonight.
No, I'm not. So the applicant is Shagian Personal Resident Trust at 26 Ocean Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk tax map number is 300-176-3-6. Size and location is 12,111 square feet at 26 Ocean Lane, Hampton Dunes, map number 4694, lot 34, Amagansett. This description is to allow a retaining wall with fence above, swimming pool coping, entry, porch, and deck, and to relocate existing swimming pool equipment on a parcel of land containing dune land, beach vegetation, and freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 244-420 of the town. 244, that's a typo. 255.
Yeah, 255.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
I was looking for that.
255-4-20 of the town code, variances from 255-430 of minimum wetland setbacks and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required. Variances of 83.8 feet, 77.7 feet, and 50.3 feet are required to allow the retaining wall and fence, the swimming pool coping, and the entry deck and porch to remain 16.2 feet, 22.3 feet, and 49.7 feet respectively from wetlands, and a 76.1 variance is required to relocate the pool equipment 22.9 feet from wetlands, where a 100-foot setback is required. B residence, AE flood zone, the elevation 10 and X flood zones, and the secret class is type 2. And this was member Berger did the presentation. So please proceed.
Okay, this one is, got quite a history, actually. Okay, this was also a hearing on December 10th, 24. The survey was dated December 5th, 2023. Right, yeah, I believe that's the correct one. And then the agent was Britton Bistrian for this. This property goes back predating and zoning. But okay, I'll start with the beginning of what happened here. In 1999, there was a ZBA approval for a pool, walkways, a deck, pool equipment, obviously, and that's about it. Some walkways and a deck near the front of the house toward the eastern side. That was approved via a ZBA NRSP. At that time, it had been flagged in 1999 for wetlands. No wetlands were found during that inspection. So the application at that time in front of the board was purely for an NRSP. Okay, so in 2002, there was a survey, C of O issued. The only C of O issued on this property was in 2002 after the pool had been completed. As it was done at that time, over time, even at that time, when it was completed, there were changes that had been made in completing the pool. Some things were not done, and the pool equipment was moved not to where it had been pre-approved by the ZBA. It was moved farther east and north. Okay, yeah, time has gone by, and in 2017, Sheehan's purchased this property. And upon moving in, they got a permit to do interior work only on the house. And then a couple of years later, I think it was in 2021, they went to get a C of O for the work that had been done with that interior work permit, and the building department found that there were other things that had been done also on that, in excess of that permit, and they were told that they could not get a C of O at that time because there was exterior work that also had been done that was never permitted. There were some emails from the building department. They had a final inspection on May 5th, 2022 for this property and failed due to the work performed outside of the permit. Those items, the items that were flagged for that are the pool fence, the deck and porch, and the deck that had been approved, the wood deck originally, there was a slate walkway, and there, over time, there was a retaining wall that had been added at some point between 2002 and the current time. The pool coping also was cited. It apparently got larger from about 12 inches to 18 inches. There was a wood retaining wall that was put on this somewhere during this history, and that retaining wall was cited also. Now what this application was for the variances. The homeowner at that time, I guess they had a contractor. The contractor did things that were not in the permit, and also I don't know what the coordination between the homeowner and the builder were, but ultimately the homeowner got rid of that. I guess I don't know if I believe the contractor disappeared or they were looking to get rid of him anyway for not conforming to the permit standards. And they, at this point, toward the end of COVID, they were looking to sell their house. And have run into a couple of problems with potential buyers because the lack of a C of O and the issues that are outstanding. So, right, what happened was they engaged Britain to help, and what Britain ended up doing was making an application to this board. The application was in front of us now for the variances. Now, the 83.8-foot variance that's requested for the retaining wall and the fence, 77.7-foot variance for pool coping to be done, and 50.3 for the entry deck and porch. In addition, there was the application is asking for a variance for the pool equipment just to move it over for the enclosure to meet side yard setbacks on that. However, there's a lot more to this as there's discrepancies in the current survey. If you look at the survey from 1999 that was associated with the ZBA approval, that wood retaining wall is not on there at all. There are two 1999 survey. One shows a proposed pool and the other shows the actual pool that was put in per that determination from the ZBA. So there was a wood deck, which also did not go in at the time, and a wood walk, and the pool equipment was supposed to go on that wood deck. But ultimately what happened with the later changes that happened on the house, that deck, the wood walkway became a slate walkway at some point, and part of the wood deck was not there, and the front of the house was redone, the deck and the porch. So that probably was the cause of moving the pool equipment over to more to the northeast side of the property. So in looking at all of this, the wood retaining wall, we had our hearing. Brian Frank was the planner on this, and we did have discussions as to how to handle this. And we saw the photos from Brian. He took photos of the retaining wall, and he also stated at the hearing that this retaining wall was not a structural component of the pool, and he believes that that had been put in sometime afterward. What happened on this also was that there was grading that was done from the original the 1999 survey. You could see where it looked like there were a couple of steps they were putting up on the eastern and southeastern corner of the pool. But the pool was slightly elevated. I believe the contour at the pool was about 10 feet. The retaining, at some point over these years, the grading had been changed, and Brian felt it was manipulated. If you look at the photos also, there was now, the fence was not up on the pool originally. And somewhere along the way, this property got graded up in 1999, and some aerials that Brian showed us from 2010, you could see that there was actually duney kind of vegetation and dune land, which you see on the rest of the property on the south side, and is very common in this area. Somehow that got graded up and was planted with grass and patio and deck and irrigation. And all of that, according to Brian, is something that would contribute to increasing flooding in the area. There was a lot of discussion back and forth, and we ended up, I believe, that Brian testified that he reckoned in the TAM, said that the wood retaining wall not being structural and not having been requested should be removed. The turf around the pool, all the turf and whatever fill had been added from the time that the pool was originally put in should be removed and should be replanted with dune-like vegetation. And I believe with Britton, she agreed or said she would speak to her applicant or clients about it. Now, the other items, I don't know, it's a little messy. So basically what was suggested, the things I mentioned was to take things back to the point of the 1999 ZBA determination, which had the pool fence was not put on at that time, but so Brian recommended taking the pool equipment, moving it back to increase the setback somewhat by moving it more southerly on the property and to the west a bit, to give it a better setback, become the minimum variance necessary, and back into that area between the house and the pool area. In 1999, those items were specified between the pool and the house. As far as the coping that increased in size 18 inches, planning department was okay with that. And then the fence that had not been put on originally, also it's a big variance, but a fence is required around the pool. So they had no problem with the fence either. So where I am on this, I will approve the pool coping variance. These are all large variances, but actually in 1999, where these things exist, those things exist today, were pretty much in keeping with 1999 and what the ZBA had determined back then. So the 77.7 pool coping, the 22 feet from the wetlands, I will approve that variance. 50.3 feet for the entry deck and porch that was added actually later on, to be 49.7 feet away. And the pool equipment, I'm not sure where exactly that's going to move to. There was, a statement that the planning department would work out with the agent as to exactly the location, but he did
I think the
recommend.
intent was to move it back to where it originally was in
Yeah,
99, but.
I was just
right?
going to get to that. So in 99, it was going to be put between the pool and the house where there was a deck that had been approved by the ZBA, but not built. So in that location. Now, as far as the retaining wall, I'm denying that variance. It's 83.8 feet for that retaining wall. And this does not meet the standards at all from 255, 430. The benefit for the applicant, the grant of this variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will create a detriment to nearby properties. I think over the years that it's been there, it already has. In 1999, there were no wetlands on this, yet there are severe wetlands currently on it. And Brian did testify that the cause of something like that is very often grading, irrigation, turf and lawn put in, and landscaping. And back to the variances. On the retaining wall, the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible. They were not even to pursue other than an area variance that Brian's statements state that it's not even serving a real purpose. It isn't structural. So there's no point in even, I don't know what else they could pursue, but the area variance, whether the area variance is substantial, it's very substantial. And whether the grant will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or in the affected area of the town. And absolutely that is true. I believe it already has over time. And whether difficulty causing the applicant to request it was self-created. It is self-created. There were statements that I don't know who did this retaining wall, contractor or somewhat, and I'm not even sure exactly when that went in, but it is self-created. Yes. So, and as far as the NRSP, everything as far as the variances, those meet the NRSP standards. Again, the wood retaining wall really does not meet the NRSP standards for our protection of freshwater wetlands and dune vegetation and dunes. There's a whole lot more, but
I think you got it. Right?
yeah, but I was,
A lot going on.
I don't know. So I don't know. We could open it for discussion. That's where I am on it.
Okay.
I'm going to deny that NRSP, and then we need to discuss we'll see how it plays out, but how this is going to be handled, because we did close the hearing. I did check with Brian. There was no subsequent communications from the agent. So, and the survey we currently have needs to be modified. There's a whole lot of that, but let's hear what everyone else has to say first.
Denise, you want to go?
Of course, okay, thank you. Thank you, Member Berger, for that very thorough deliberation. I do agree that the application should be in compliance with the 1999 determination. I think there was a lot resolved and agreed to during the public hearing, and that's what I would like to focus my comments on. Since the applicant is simply before us because they're trying to get a C of O. They're trying to legalize work that was done outside of the jurisdiction of an NRSP or a variance. So my understanding is they're going to be removing the retaining wall variance, which is the one that runs parallel to the north of the swimming pool. And they're going to regrade that area back to the 2002 topo. The pool equipment, there was a little bit of a discussion about the pool equipment. There was discussion about putting it in a more compliant location, but there was also a discussion about the fact that moving it would be a little bit more invasive, and I'm sort of leaning toward that. And Britton Bistrian did agree that she would put an enclosure around the generator to meet code. We also, as far as I know, agreed to remove the fencing on the north and eastern side and revegetate the whole north side, which will create a better buffer to the wetlands with Cape American beach grass. There is to be no irrigation in the dune land, and install a wooden snow fence to protect the wetlands during construction. So I think, from my point of view, the mitigation offered and agreed to during the public hearing is adequate for me to approve this application.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I think this is, and the vice chair just hit on it, how that meeting ended up left us in a certain amount of confusion. But let me go back to not repeating what I've heard from my fellow members. A key element here for me is to go back to the 99 approval. At that time, two things happened that are key for understanding this application for me. One is that no wetlands were identified at that time. And although they're wetlands now, we have to respect them. At that time, that they were approving this pool going in and the equipment, we didn't have wetlands to deal with. And that's something to consider as we move further along here. And the other thing is that it's very clear that was shown that night, if we go back and we have the survey, that what was approved was a series of steps that were approached from the south, and I guess that would be the east side, that enabled you to come up and get into the pool. Now, at that point, it looked like there was probably a 12-inch coping approved. The coping now is a little more like 18 inches. But the key thing that happened here is that somebody went and built a retaining wall, filled it with sand, brought it up a couple of feet, made a flat area around in the desire to have a bit of a working area, a place to put a chair or two. They created this platform, and this platform is filled with a great deal of sand. Brian Frank brought out two facts about it is, one, of course, it doesn't belong there, but secondly, that the wall itself will fail at some point. At that point, maybe 100 yards of fill will wind up sloughing down towards the wetlands into other properties, changing grade, causing damage. It really has to go. It was not approved. There was nothing that was ever approved along the way. It just appeared. I think that if we go back to 99, we see what was approved and we can see what we thought was what the previous board was allowing. We're allowing for the pool in its location. We're allowing for a location, the pool equipment that did not go in, and some steps around the pool. In terms of the equipment, for two reasons: the fact that it showed up in a 2002 approval and that there were no wetlands at the time it went in. I'm not in favor of asking to have the pool equipment moved. I think in fairness to the applicant here, nobody along the way has pointed out in 2002, we had an opportunity to tell them it's in the wrong location. That didn't happen. Or not 2002, yeah, in the 2002 CFO. But I think that what I wind up having as a bit of a problem is how that meeting ended. I know that when we did get Britton back, she said, oh, what I'm hearing is, and I wrote it down here, she had an assessment that what the board was looking for is a removal of the walls, removal of the fill, and return to the 99 status. The problem is the meeting closed and we did not get an entry confirming that that's what they're doing. So I'm going to do the same thing that the vice chair did and assume that that was agreed upon and approve this on the basis that we return to 99. I'm not going to ask to see that from my point of view, that the pool equipment gets moved. I think there is a certain disturbance factor there you can consider. And the rest of the property, I think there's the question of the dunescape, and that other fence that was buried down in there is to be removed.
Right.
It was mentioned by the
Right.
vice chair.
Yeah.
But I do think that this whole hearing was really about the elevated platform around the pool, and then what is the potential long-term damage if that wall fails? And I think that we saw photos showing that structurally it's slightly inept and maybe more than slightly. So we go back to 99. That's what we're asking for. Then they can come back and apply for the C of O, and we'll see where it goes. So for me, I think that it was, as was brought up by Member Berger, an involved and slightly convoluted hearing, and we didn't get a great resolution. But I'm going to agree with the vice chair here and say that at the end of that meeting, my understanding was that we're going to go back to 99. And if that's the case, then I can approve this application.
Thank you. I agree. I think the key here is that the construction of the retaining wall and the regrading altered the dunescape of this property that is intended to be preserved by the town in the town code. And I think the decision to remove that retaining wall and regrade accordingly is appropriate here, and to revegetate. I agree with that. I agree with my fellow board members on that. I also agree that I think the pool equipment should remain where it was approved is a few feet closer. This is a few feet. I think it'd be more invasive to try to move that.
Right.
As far as the deck and the porch. Now, we do have to remember that there was a larger deck that was approved
Right.
in the C of O. That is not there anymore. So that's a benefit. So with that, I would approve this application with the denial of that retaining wall and the restoration of the dunescape. Do also want to reinforce that there was that fence that was closer. They agreed to remove. So with that, I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
We good?
Wait, I think we need details worked out, though.
What, with what?
I don't think it's that simple.
What do you mean?
Well, we
Well,
got,
I think we have to specify, well, they said they should work with the planning
Are we
department.
talking about the fencing now?
Huh?
Is that what we're talking about, the fencing?
Well, there's the fencing, that messed up fencing that was
Well,
kind of
what they
buried.
agreed
They're
to
going
was
to
to
take
remove-
that, remove that fencing.
On the north
North,
and
right.
eastern side.
It runs from the north all the way across from the west to the east.
That's what we agreed to at the hearing.
Yeah. And as far as going back to the 1999, the pool equipment, I think should be moved back to where it had been proposed, which was more in this area. I mean, in terms of the pool equipment saying the walkway or the deck's not there, what happened, they ended up putting slate walkways in. They ended up putting the retaining wall also near the parking area that was not there back in 1999. I don't know if that related to the septic at all. I'm not sure why,
I
but.
think it was represented that it was.
It was.
And, but as far as the retaining wall and what they're going to restore, yes, that they remove all the fill, remove the retaining wall entirely.
In the topsoil.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They regrade that
Soil,
that
right.
area back to the
Regrade it back
2002
to the
topo.
topo. Yeah, it was about a 2-foot
Mhm.
regrading that Brian had said was done, looked like it was done.
Good. Are we
Okay.
good?
You good?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, but I guess I'll be okay with the pool equipment, but now they did want to move it slightly over to meet the setback for the enclosure. So I guess that falls with this. There's an existing deck to be removed. We never even discussed it, so I assume
being
that's
removed.
going to happen.
Mhm.
Okay. And I guess that is it.
Okay. So you're denying the pool equipment part of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So it
going
would
to
be a
deny that. I
three-
think it should go back somewhere, as Brian had said, like near where that deck.
3-1
originally
on the
approved.
pool equipment.
Okay, council, we good? Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
we tried to make it
And,
as
well, that has to be
confusing.
conditioned, that whole thing, that whole plan needs to be conditioned by the planning department
Mhm.
before they get a permit. That's-
Okay. Next, we have Jason and Ashley Lybath at 15 Bay Inlet Road in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-23-2-9. Size and location is 29,000 square feet. At 15 Bay Inlet Road, Lionhead Beach, Lot 36, Map Number 3451 in Springs. The description is to construct a 54 square foot first floor addition, 597 second floor addition, 84 square foot balcony, 48 square foot first floor covered porch, 100 square foot second floor covered porch, a 200 square foot swimming pool, pool equipment, pool fencing, and an upgrade sanitary system to convert the existing 533 square foot garage to living space and to allow an existing 447 square feet stone patio to remain within jurisdiction and setbacks of tidal wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 3 variances are required for this application. 3 variances of 43.7 feet, 32.4 feet, and 12 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code to construct a proposed balcony 56.3 feet, addition 67.6 feet, and porches 88 feet from tidal wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is B residence, zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. This was in Vice Chair. Yes. Area, you take it off.
I will do that. Okay, so this public hearing was held December 10th. There were no callers. The public hearing and record was closed. Tara Burke appeared on behalf of the application, and Tyler Borsak appeared on behalf of the planning department. There's a new survey in the file from James Walsh Surveying. Latest survey is dated 11/17/24, and this actually outlines the revisions that were brought before us the night of the public hearing. There's also a revised sanitary system plan prepared by Drew Bennett, also new, dated November 13th, 2024, which also outlines revisions made to the project and given to us the night of the public hearing. The building plans and the elevations are in the file prepared by Robert Lenahan, licensed architect, dated received January 24th, 2024. Now, I'm going to be referencing a letter submitted to us December 3rd from Tara Burke, because in that, she really goes through the revisions that were made to the project. Now, I'm not going to say initially, when I first reviewed this project, I was very concerned about what was being proposed. But after receiving the revisions that are outlined in Tara Burke's December 3rd, 2024 memo, I feel the application itself is, in my feeling, much more favorable than it was. The first thing they've done is they've actually swapped the reason the survey and the sanitary plan were resubmitted was because they've actually swapped the location of both those things than what was originally proposed. The new submission moves the swimming pool closer to the house at 136.5 feet from the wetlands and relocates the septic closer to the property line at 168.8 feet from the wetlands. So the two structures have swapped locations from what was originally proposed. The other thing that they did was the seaward balcony, which is very small, only 3 feet, it's just there to enhance the second-story view and allow for a very small outdoor seating area. It's on the second floor. It's cantilevered over the first story. It's really not touching the ground or impacting the environment, I feel, in any way. And they are willing to covenant a condition that says this will not be used as an expansion of the residence for a livable space in the future. So I think that I could agree to that. The total clearing proposed is now 9,322 square feet, increasing the overall vegetation from what currently exists. The scenic easement, the planning department notes that a revegetation that provides additional buffer might be enough to mitigate, and I actually do agree with that. They would like to offer a scenic easement over the wetland area that is delineated on the survey with allowance for the existing footpath. The scenic easement would ensure the area to be protected in perpetuity. I think the proposed improvements are all in already disturbed areas. They're using existing structures to not really get closer to the wetlands than what currently exists. And with the existing garage is also now being converted into habitable space to utilize the existing structure as much as possible. They're also upgrading their sanitary system. Their proposed additions appear to be adequately, in my view, mitigated. The total lot coverage is decreasing and the building coverage is staying the same. So in terms of the mitigation, the sanitary is being upgraded to a lower nitrogen system, and they're willing to establish a scenic easement on the existing vegetated buffer along Hog Creek and covenant no future expansion of the residence into the proposed 3 foot wide balcony area. The low nitrogen system is a significant upgrade to the environmental conditions at the present time. There's one other thing they referenced. The stone patio, there's a significant portion of that patio that they stated at the public hearing will be removed because it didn't meet setbacks. And they're also, I think they said they were removing the outdoor shower as well. The clearing, 9,322, is lower than what is currently cleared. The building coverage is going to stay the same, and the lot coverage is decreasing. So, for these reasons, I do feel like the mitigation that has been offered gives significant protection to a very sensitive site. And for these reasons stated, I am going to be approving this application.
Thank you. Ed? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that comprehensive analysis of what we saw here. I think that you referenced Tara Burke's letter, and I think Tara Burke's letter responded directly to the TAM, and she did as best she could to sort of answer the questions that we raised. That hearing, therefore, became one of discussing what could be done to make this as palatable to us as possible. And I think she did a pretty good job with that, or the applicant did. There were a number of things. When they made the change, they moved the septic as far away they could. They added another 35 feet further away by switching the garage with the septic, which was a recommendation from the TAM, a solid one that they followed. I think that the fact that most improvements here are happening landward of the house and not to seaward of the house. I think that the second floor is a small cantilever deck. She talked about having access to those windows and be able to pass. A key element there was that they're willing to covenant that would not be enclosed and become part of living area, which is always a concern of ours. We see patios that sometimes want to get converted too easily. We don't like that very much. The additional 470 foot of increased buffer to the wetlands is a key. Adding the buffer and then also providing the scenic easement over the buffer, over the wetlands. This removing some of the stone patio is important. We started out cautiously looking at this because it is an HPOD area. We have a lot to consider here. And every time we have a house in this area, we have to worry about what is the impact going to be on the wetland. And it could be dramatic if we handle this incorrectly. I think it was a reasonable approach anyway. And I think the scenic easement and the IA are big improvements for this lot on the water. I think they're a big help. I'm going to be careful that we don't always consider an IA a cure-all for everything. In some cases, it's a good thing to have happen. It's not the only thing that we look for. But when we're dealing directly with wetlands and waterfront like this, anytime we can improve the septic system is a major plus for the town, I believe. I think that the coverages were going down, lot coverage was going down, clearing was decreasing. I think that when you bring a project to the planning department and they give you recommendations and you react positively to them, I look favorably on that in terms of what the applicant's willing to do. So for the same reasons, I'm not going to go through the standards, but for the same reasons that were brought up by the vice chair here, I think this was a good application, good reaction, and I think what they're asking for is more than mitigated by the scenic easement, the additional buffer, and the IA system. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to approve this application.
Thank you. Jane, you want to go?
Sure, thank you. I am in general agreement with my fellow board members who have spoken thus far, but I'll just run through, some of also how I look at it relative to the project and relative to the standards. So, the GFA expansion itself is significant. However, I think it's almost doubling, above ground GFA, but even with that, the bedroom count does not appear to be increasing from what I can tell from the architect's plans. And so I don't see this as creating a lot of greater intensity of use on the property. The first floor expansion of the GFA is entirely within the conversion of an existing structure, the attached garage, and the covered entryway that adds a bit to GFA's landward, more on the landward side of the house. The second floor expansion of the GFA is also more on the landward side of the house, and it also is being constructed entirely over and within the limits of the existing footprint of the house. One thing that they were able to show graphically was persuasive to me, which is that even though there's a, significant variance required for that second story addition, all in, I believe only 95 square feet of that second story structure pierces the wetland setback line. So it really is, I think, although numerically it's not an insubstantial number, the amount of area that needs that variance is quite small. Next point, as was said, the applicants took a lot of feedback from the TAM, the flipping of the septic to get it completely out of jurisdiction of the wetlands, with the pool, and the pool also remaining, it gets a little bit closer, but it's still 135 feet from the wetlands, and of course it's landward of the house. It's also partially, the size of the pool is, I think, partially being offset by a reduction in the driveway. You have and I think the pool is pretty modest in size at 200 square feet relative to the size of the parcel. The parcel is constrained, and it would be very hard to do much of anything because of where the pre-existing non-conforming house sits relative to the wetlands. And then I think that one of the things the applicant did very well with respect to the standards is, Ms. Burke went through different ideas they had, different ways they tried to, I don't think the variances could have been eliminated, but to be made smaller. So I thought, the burden that is on them to show how alternative designs were considered was met. I won't go through all the standards again. I think what I've covered here suggests that it meets all the standards for the variances and the NRSP. And with respect to the NRSP, I agree that I don't think technically the septic is mitigation. I think it would have been required because of the expansion of the house, but it is significant on this property in an H-pod, near an important body of water, and the reduction in the clearing, the reduction in the coverage, the establishment of the scenic easement, and the buffer. So all these points, to me, support the conclusion that the applicant meets all the standards, and I am improving it in full.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, agree with all of my fellow board members on everything. I'll just repeat a few things that I was impressed also by that following some of the recommendations in the TAM, particularly the IA system swap with the pool. As far as that, I don't recall any discussion of maybe hitting the 50% cap in the TAM or at the hearing. But so I do think the sanitary is a very good mitigation on this case, because this was the original septic system that exists there today from 1967, I think,
Yep.
1960s. So I think that's, sorely needed, probably. And it's also very near the water side right now, so could be leaching right into Hog Creek. The clearing, I like the adjustment they made there. Originally, they were going to come within 2 feet of maximum clearing, and by changing that to a 470-foot, the re-veg buffer, it now will be meeting the clearing. It'll be down to 9322 square feet. The scenic easement, I think, is also very good mitigation over the wetlands, and I think we discussed it's a 30-foot buffer, right, for the scenic easement from the wetlands.
Yes.
And the covenant for the balcony never becoming, it's an 88-foot balcony. I know it's only 3 foot wide, but that it will never become habitable space is also excellent. change to the project. And I do think it meets all the natural resource standards and the variance standards that are requested. So I too am going to approve the whole thing.
Mr. Chair, I just did want to mention, I didn't just call out the balcony, and because it's the only seaward side change, I did also want to acknowledge that the covenant is important, and it's with 3 feet deep. I don't see it as, becoming a big intrusion on the wetlands. So I'm sorry, I want to just get that in there. Thank you.
I agree with my fellow board members. I don't have a lot to add, but I do like to say that, when we have a property like that is in the Harbor Protection Overlay District, we have to take a look at the environmental conditions. I think the applicant in this case did a very good job addressing those concerns, the concerns of the planning department, and coming back with a really good solution. The increased buffer, the scenic easement. I agree that although the septic system is not considered mitigation, but it is another environmental plus. So with that, I would also approve this application in its entirety. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you said it's not considered mitigation?
Well, because this would be, we don't have proof that it's a 50%.
Yeah, we never talked about it.
We
Was it
didn't
in the
really
TAM?
discuss
It's a good point. It's a good point. I'll correct myself on that. Thank you. Regardless, it's a environmental
Good project. It's a benefit to the property.
Thank you.
And it is an NRSP.
Okay, with that, council, we good? Next, we have Stephen Stone at 33 Seaside Avenue in Montauk. Suffolk tax map number 300-32-4-33.6. Size and location is 48,016 square feet at 33 Seaside Avenue, Seaside Shores, Block 600, lots 5 and 6, map number 1518 in Montauk. The description is to demolish an existing 445 square foot attached garage, 2 covered entries, and slate patio, and to construct a 417 square foot 1-story addition with 928 square foot first and second story porches and decking, chimney, wire fencing, and an upgrade sanitary system within jurisdiction and setbacks of tidal wetlands. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 2 variances are required for this application. Variances of 48 and 73 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code to construct the proposed addition 52 feet, decking 27 feet for freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class 2 is type 2, and member Johan handled it for me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will remember that the hearing was held also on December 10th, 2024. We were working from a survey from March 5th, 2024. We received it on March 13th of that year. We also received a septic plan and drainage plans, both from TF Engineering on November 3rd, 2023. And we received them on the 14th of November 23. We had house plans to look at from Robert Marino Architect. They were dated 9/18/23, received on 11/14/23. The applicant was represented by Joel Halsey of Lighthouse Land Planning. And Joel Halsey, at one point after the issuance of the TAM, did send us a letter where he tried to address a number of the concerns and the questions raised in the TAM. The project was to demolish, as was already stated, 445 square foot attached garage and the covered entries and the slate patio, but then to construct 417 foot 1-story addition with 928 square feet of decks. And so there is some significant change happening to the residents. They needed an NRSP and 2 variances, and the current house is 1655, and it was going to go to 2,072 feet. At this point, I want to immediately go to the TAM because there were some very interesting statements in the TAM, and I want to quote one right to start with here, and that is that in the TAM prepared by Tyler, the applicants are proposing a nearly 1-to-1 swap for the attached garage for gross floor area between the additions to the residence, which is something for us to consider as we move forward, because removing the garage allowed for a new setting for the IA system, which we'll get to in a minute. Also, it's important for us to remember that they would not have had to come in front of us if they had decided just to convert the garage. So the garage would not have had to be completed with the benefit of, here it says, a building permit or a ZBA overview. I think that's an important thing for us to kind of keep in mind here when we're putting in balance what kind of decision to make here. And then one other thing here before I leave the TAM and go back. Tyler had said he really doesn't anticipate additional runoff can be expected from second floor decking, that we should not have a particularly negative environmental effect. And that swapping the detached garage for additions to the residence certainly seems like a reasonable request. I think that's where the starting point here is, that we're taking a garage down, we're adding something on, and the client, or the applicant in this case, was looking for a way to see if he could make that acceptable to get the approval of this, most importantly, the NRSP. And then one other thing that was mentioned here was overall the project appears to be proposing minor increases over the existing structures on a very constrained property, and I think that's true. I think that the IA system in this location is, of course, a major improvement. It's important to remember on Seaside, I think I mentioned at night of the hearing, that by and large, the house lots there are sand and fill that was dumped in on wetlands. When you stand on any of these lots, and we review a number of them in front of the board, they're almost completely surrounded by wetlands. This one certainly is. There's wetlands on all sides. So the natural constriction to the lot exists, so the house is there. The natural constrictions are severe here. There's no one direction to go, that you're not going to be doing something about getting closer to a wetland in anything you do. So any new project is going to require us to have to look at this from the viewpoint that there is not a lot of alternatives. One little side thing as we go forward, there's a raised garden in the front. That garden shows up on old surveys at the time of the 2010 C of O. It was in existence, and therefore it's been C of O'd. I do think it is down right adjacent to the wetlands on the, what is that, the south side, no, the west side of the house? Yeah, the west side of the house. So that was something to consider, but I put that aside based on the fact that it did exist in a previous C of O. The septic now is moved in a way, it's in a very good location in comparison to what it might have been, because eliminating the garage meant that there was an opportunity to place that septic immediately to the, I guess I'm trying to get my orientation. I guess that is the west, immediately to the west, and to pull back the system as a whole, so that most of it is still underneath the existing garage now as it's going to be installed. That gets it as far from the wetlands as you possibly could. And again, it was mentioned the night of the hearing and mentioned at the TAM, this is probably the best location that you could have for installing a TAM on this very constricted property. I think a big part of what we then discussed was fencing. There's a fence to the rear of the house that is right on the wetlands now. The applicant would like to keep as much of open space as he could. Will we move that fence back, and how much would we move it back? They offered to move it 10 feet from the wetlands and suggested that rather than re-veg, they'd let it grow back naturally. Of course, that's not something that we generally look to approve, and it's not something that the planning department recommends. And I think that in this case here, the question became, it was raised again by Tyler, but we could move it back to the 28-foot contour line. If we did, I think you take about half of what their open space in their backyard is. When I looked at this here, I think that what I read into from the TAM is that this is pretty much a swap as you come along. The question starts to become, what can we do to more protect the wetlands? One thing we're doing is getting a better septic system, this whole septic system, who knows how it functions. We're definitely getting an improvement there. Most of what's going on in terms of the decks that they're adding are over pre-existing construction. So I don't think that the invasion or the potential damage to the wetlands here was as significant as the discussion we wind up having about what should we do about the fence, how much additional buffer can we provide to the north from this property. I thought about this, and I think that recommendation on behalf of the planning department to come back to the 28th contour line is fair, but I also think it's fair to consider the fact that there's not much actual flat ground behind this property. If this is to be moved back 10 foot from the wetlands and to be revegetated the re-veg plan to be approved by the planning department, I could be comfortable with that. When I want to go through the standards here, when I look at 255, 551, D, the preservation of natural resources here, I think the improvements that they're doing in terms of the septic and hopefully the revegetation for that slight area is an improvement. For alternative designs, I think this is a bit of an alternative design in removing the garage and making an exchange so we can get the septic pulled back as best you can. Then under 255, 540, compatibility, is this site proposed a suitable one for the location of such a use? I think the answer to that is yes. And then let me just see what else I have here. Oh, and then under environmental protection, the natural characteristics of the site, such as proposed, may be introduced here without undue disturbance. I think that anytime we're dealing with such a sensitive lot like this surrounded by wetlands, we look for the best possible use and reuse of the site. All in, when I'm looking at this, I think there's a fairly even trade made. I think that there was an effort made to do something as constructive as you possibly could with the septic system. And I think the compromise that I'm making on behalf of the applicant here is not to ask to come back to the 28-foot contour, but to live with that 10-foot line. I'd like to see what the rest of the board thinks about that, but I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
Thank you. Denise?
Well,
Put it down to
you
you.
want to go first, Tara?
You want to go first,
I
Sarah?
can go first.
for it.
whatever.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I agree with Johan on much of this, maybe all of it. The IA system, taking down the garage and putting in the IA system in that location, I think was a very well thought out and big improvement in mitigation. I do agree, as Tyler stated in the TAM too, that the swap for the first story addition with the house and the screen porch and the deck above it, the redoing of the front steps, that is a good swap, and that's adequate mitigation. The one thing I came down to actually was the same thing, the clearing and the revegetation. I was a little thrown by Joel's position that revegetating was just going to be disappearing in a year or two. Then when I saw the 10-foot buffer from the fence, 10 foot from the wetland all around the entire property, I too thought that was pretty good. And then looking at the Tyler's alternative of the 28-foot contour line, it's more, but I don't know. I think I too think that the 10-foot from the wetlands is a good buffer. Now, the revegetation inside the wetlands or between the wetlands and the fence, I can understand Joel's point a little bit. That is where we're talking about revegetation, right? Because it might or might not last. However, I also know that if you leave it cleared, the first thing that seems to pop up is always invasive species of some sort. So I think I would like to see some revegetation in that area. Give it a shot. But I am looking to approve the project overall. I do think, the alternative that they could have just incorporated the garage space into living space and not done anything but get a building permit is interesting. I guess it is an option for them. But I think this, with everything that's being done, it's good mitigation. We're getting the IA system. And their property will be taken care of for the future. And I think it's a decent project, and the wetland, the 10-foot fence 10 feet from the wetland, I do think is a good option.
Thank you. Now Denise?
Okay, thank you. Well, I agree with everyone that the IA system is a plus, and the second story decking, which is the closest structure to the wetlands, is within the footprint of the existing first story, and it's no closer to the wetlands than the current residence. I think the sanitary system is in the most conforming location, and it is providing adequate mitigation for the increase in the GFA in the residents. I think a scenic easement will provide another layer of protection, which should be implemented over the northern portion of the property. My biggest concern, I gave a lot of scrutiny to the construction of a new fence with a minimum setback of 10 feet to the wetlands. The clearing on this property is proposed to remain at the existing non-conforming 16,798 square feet, where 16,026 square feet is the maximum. The one thing I'm not going to approve is the construction of the new wire fence. I think the new wire fence should meet a better setback since it's so close to the wetlands. And the wetlands around this parcel, which we've spoken about already, are extensive and provide environmental benefits to wildlife, diverse plants, removal of pollutants and nutrients prior to groundwater recharge, and reduction of floodwaters. I think I'm in favor of everything on this project except the new wire fence. I'm in agreement that it should be brought back to the 28-foot contour line. I'm in complete agreement with what the TAM is suggesting, and that is the only part of this project that I will be denying.
Okay, we're brought back to the 28.
Then I
We
would,
can revisit that. Okay.
I can revisit it if it's brought back to the 28-foot contour line.
Okay, thank you. So I do, like my fellow board members have noted, this is a constrained property, wetlands all around, the topography, constrains what can be done. I think the existing house is totally in jurisdiction of wetlands, if I'm correct on that. So obviously relief could be, is legitimate to be seeking. As we have, the project requires the NRSP and the 2 variances. But the increase in the GFA is not that significant, and of course, from a structural standpoint, net, it's only 50 square feet more on the structure when you take away the garage, which has been discussed as making way for a new septic in its most conforming position. I just note that the building coverage increases by about 220 square feet and 14%, and the total coverage increases by 128 square feet, or just around 3.7%. But both of the coverage ratios, when this is done, are still well below the theoretical maximums that are allowed on a lot this size, although I don't know, because of the wetlands, if they could ever get to those theoretical maximums. And the clearing, as has been discussed, remains at 16,795 square feet compared with the permitted. So it remains 769 square feet over the max permitted clearing. And again, I'm not counting in that place behind the northern part of the fence will just magically, revegetate with native plants, right? So, and I do agree, the septic is important mitigation. There's also some drainage mitigation that's not there. So all in on the variances, I think mathematically they're substantial. However, I'm not sure that, that there's, that they could really accomplish much with no variances, let alone with even, smaller, lesser magnitude variances. And so all in, I don't necessarily, I do believe these variances and their NRSP basically meet the standard, but I can't help but come away from this application feeling, and I think my fellow board members didn't say it like this, but feeling that this really should be a bit of a better application environmentally in terms of how the wetlands are protected. I think it's hard to come away not seeing, that gap really closed relative to conforming clearance, given the sensitivity of this area, how the TAM talks about how susceptible it is to chronic flooding and other drainage problems. So I don't think it's the fence position I mind as much, as long as it's 10 feet, from a 10-feet buffer. But I do feel that, right now, Vice Chair, you talked about wanting to see that a significant scenic easement over the, part of the property. I don't think it was offered, but, I think, if there is a nexus to that, I would agree that there should be more protection and some more revegetation. I know the planning department was talking about something like over 2,000 square feet more of re-veg. I don't know if there's a nexus to ask for all of that, but it does feel, I think, based on how we're going to sort it out, that the application could be better, but I'm not going to deny the variances for the structure or the NRSP. So I'm leaving a little wiggle room there. I hope that makes sense.
Where did you wind up on the fence?
I'm not, I'm okay with the fence. Would it be okay to see it? Again, to me, it's more about the clearing and a need for more vegetation. For me, feels more important environmentally than exactly where the fence is going. And I guess, there was a narrative in a memo that said that something like the applicant was bought the house because attracted to large, beautiful yard and landscaping, but would never have bought the property if they couldn't keep the fence where it is, and, if they had to do a lot of re-veg. That was not persuasive. That was not persuasive to me.
But also, if I may, and I'm reading from the TAM, if we go to that 28-foot contour on the northern and southeastern extent, this could help reduce the non-conforming clearing on the property by both eliminating clearing within the wetlands, increasing the setbacks of the closest clearing, and also reducing overall clearing by 2,300 square feet. Now, this fencing is in close proximity to wetlands. So you already have a situation on a lot where, because it's pre-existing, non-conforming, they're already over the clearing.
Right.
So I think, in my view, the way I looked at this was a good compromise to sort of compensate a little bit for what we can't change there because it's non-conforming. We just can't, we have to live with that.
Right.
So I was almost looking at the shifting of the fence to keep us more in compliance with the clearing as much as we could, because there's really no nexus to asking for it in any other way. Well, that was my thinking on it. But
the moving of the fence makes way for potential revegetation of the magnitude that you just said.
Correct.
But it's not, are we going to require the moving of the fence and 2,300 square feet of veg. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
what you're saying. Okay.
Absolutely, that's
Okay,
exactly
so
what
if there's a
I'm saying.
nexus to
Because the
to do
clearing and
that-
the re-veg,
Yeah.
the lack of revegetation were my biggest concerns.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm fine with the whole project.
Okay, that's why I was saying I'm more concerned about the re-veg than the fence, but
I
you're saying
think
they
they
come
should both
together.
be together.
Right, well, I would agree with that if there's a nexus to be able to do that, and the scenic easement.
Yes. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm one voice. I'm only one
You gonna let me
voice.
go now? No.
Your turn.
That was good debate, guys. I like that.
I think we're just trying to get on the same
That's good.
page,
That was
yeah, or similar thinking. Yeah.
I agree with, I'm more in the camp of moving the fence myself. I agree that the application is a well thought out application. I almost think this fits the definition of, is there an alternative design? And I think removing the garage and putting a septic system there is just a very smart way of doing this. I'm more in the camp of moving the fence to the 28 contour in the northern part of this property. And re-veg as well. Regarding scenic easement, I don't see that there's a nexus for requiring that because the wetlands are the hard line. And I don't see any zoning board or anything gonna be, or anybody gonna be, what's it gonna do, right? So scenic easement, I think, is sort of defeating the purpose because that wetlands line is there. So I would approve this application as well as conditioning it on moving the fence to the 28 contour and re-veg. I mean, that's fine. So we would have a 3-2 on that?
Well, Tyler, can you show us the difference on that?
Two for the 28 for the fence.
3-2 for leaving it where it is.
I'm not sure.
Well,
That's changed.
so Mr. Chair, when you say move it to the 28 contour, there's one on the north side and one on the
The one on
south?
the north side.
Just the
I'm
one,
concerned.
not the south side?
No, I don't think
Okay.
that's.
And so that's why you're saying we wouldn't need the scenic easement on that side if we
Yeah.
moved it. Yeah, I agree. You know what? I agree with that.
Yeah, I'd be on board.
I'd be
I would agree
in
with that,
agreement with
too.
that too.
Is that the red light? I wanted to see it, the 28 contour
Sorry, can
line.
you zoom a little more on that?
Where's it go after that?
It goes from property line to
Just
property line.
follow the fence as proposed at that point.
That's it, Tyler, right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. So that's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
and we're asking for that area outside of the fence to be revegetated, not just be allowed to let nature take its
I want
course.
to make a comment about what Joel said on this, and that the fact that a year from now, the revegetation might not be there, that'd be a slippery slope for us to go down, in my
yeah.
opinion,
Yes.
agreeing
I
to
agree.
a point like that. So I think revegetation would be the
I think any
appropriate.
decision like that becomes a policy decision, and we should
Yeah.
be doing.
No, and obviously the revegetation has to be maintained.
Okay, we good?
Okay, yeah, I will change and go with the 28
So we're
foot
unanimous
contour
then.
line on the north.
That's great.
Yeah,
I will change it.
Were you unanimous on moving the fence and approving the application?
On the north side.
On the north side.
We're not unanimous,
No,
sorry.
no.
south side's fine.
Oh, Ed's not.
No, Ed's not,
I didn't change my vote. It's 4 to
Okay,
1.
so it's 4-1.
No, I like the idea of getting 2,300 square feet back.
yeah, me too.
Or we're leaving the fence where it's proposed on the
And
rest
all
of the
approval
property.
with 4 to 1 on the
Yeah.
fence.
That's a good discussion. I like that.
Thank you.
So Tyler, you going to print that?
Well, yeah, but we could do it a number of ways. I don't know if you want to reference this contour line on the north side is where the fence is going to be, or we can do a sketch for the board to include in the
Okay, a sketch.
determination.
Sketch is good.
Be either. We'll work that out.
Great, thank you. Next, that covers the decisions we have this evening, post-hearing decisions. We now have an extension of time with Resnick, 72 Shore Road Drive, East Amagansett, tax map number 300-107-1-22. I believe this is a 2020 determination. I think they're in construction, Tyler?
Yes. Yeah, so the project is currently under construction. We don't really have any concerns with it. The conditions haven't changed at all, and it's currently being constructed, so.
Everyone fine with the extension of time?
So 1-year extension?
What's
Yeah,
the-
they're usually 1 year,
Checking.
yeah.
That's what I thought I read, but, okay.
We have a motion?
Yes. So in the matter of Resnick, 72 Shore Drive East, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-107-1-22, I make a motion to approve the one-year extension of time.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. We next have the draft minutes of January 7th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the East Hampton County Zoning Board of Appeals for January 7th, 2025.
Second.
I concur.
Right, there was a little frog in my throat when I said so.
We now move on to resolutions. We have 101 Gerard Drive. That's in the vice chair. I was recused.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so just for the record, the purpose of this application was to construct a 1,751 square feet of first and second story addition, 587 square feet of decking, a 187 square foot balcony, and a swimming pool to a 1,016 square foot one-story residence on a parcel of land containing tidal surface waters. This is for 101 Gerard Drive, 300-41-2-11.2. The board made a decision, and of course, Chairman Deline recused himself. The board granted a natural resource special permit. And I believe, let me just find my sheet. Yes, I'm getting to that. Just trying to get my paperwork out. Remember, Johan denied the pool, but was concurring with regarding the issuance of an NRSP for the additions, and myself, Member Berger, and Member Mehring were in favor of the application. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the determination for 101 Gerard Drive LLC, 101 Gerard Drive in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-41-2-11.2. I'd like to make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Seconded.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Next, we have Bendigo Beach LLC at 2 Bendigo Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-152-1-11.1. Member Mehring.
Thank you. Yes, this application, actually, we heard, I think back in October, November, seems like a long time ago, but as you'll recall, this is a spectacular word we used many times during the public hearing, 11 plus acre property that contains every conceivable protected natural feature and natural resources that our code protects. It's, as I said, new development. It's, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's roughly, I think, a 5,500 square foot house, a pool, and a, obviously, septic and patios. The application needed an NRSP, but was purposely and purposefully designed to not need any variances to either the shoreline or to the wetlands. And we approved this application, I think unanimously. There was a lot of discussion, and I hope it's, there was one thing, well, I think the change was made. So, we talked a lot about the construction protocol, the tightness of the lot, keeping the soils intact, but a lot of discussion. We left the record open and had gotten more things in. I think everyone was satisfied that this property will, be tightly controlled. So I'm going to make a motion to, in the matter of Bendigo Beach LLC, 2 Bendigo Road, Amagansett, tax map 300-152-1-11.1, making a motion to accept the resolution determination as written. Sorry, determination as written.
Second. Concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. We next have Nora Franzetti at 25 Hawk House Lane in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-13-2-18.1. It's a resolution amending determination. I think there was a typo in this one. Is that right, Charlie?
Yeah. 2 typos?
So we're correcting.
Oh, that's
there was
right.
a typo.
There was a second one too, right?
I think there were 2 typos.
There were two things, yeah.
So they were corrected in this, and maybe, can we have a motion then from
Yes,
somebody?
you can. Then in the case of Nora Franzetti, 25 Talkhouse Lane, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-13-2-18.1, I'd like to make a motion to accept the determination as amended.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you.
And I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Zoning Board of Appeals work session on January 14th, 2025 at 8:04 PM.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.